Welcome to part 2 of the Recapture Your Health with Delicious Plant Foods video series. In part 1, we shared some of the science showing how effective whole food plant-based diets are in preventing and treating coronary artery disease and type 2 diabetes. We finished part 1 briefly covering the work of T. Colin Campbell, which included his research findings linking casein, a main dairy protein, to tumor promotion. Before we look a bit more at the relationship between diet and cancer, I just want to read 2 important disclaimers. The information provided is designed for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for informed medical advice or care. You should not use this information to diagnose or treat any health problems or illnesses without consulting your family doctor. So please consult a doctor with any questions or concerns you might have. And dietary change is powerful medicine. If you are currently under a physician's care and/or are on prescription medications, notify your physician on your plans to follow a whole food plant-based diet. Very often, certain prescription medications can be reduced or even eliminated. This is particularly important if you are on blood pressure and diabetes medications. Dietary change is powerful medicine, and there's a mountain of research showing diet's powerful role in the development of various cancers. Cancer is the second leading killer after heart disease in populations eating an animal-based diet, and this includes the United States. Cancer is not a singular disease. There are around 200 different types of human cancer, some more complex than others, and some more serious than others. Cancer is probably the most feared disease not only because it kills, but also because the disease and its treatments often cause terrible suffering. In 1971, President Nixon declared war on cancer by signing the National Cancer Act. And we've won some battles over these many years, but we are a long way from winning the war. Countless tax dollars have been spent in search of a cure. The main types of treatment include surgery, chemotherapy, and radiotherapy. However, over the last few decades, a large amount of research has built a clearer picture on how diet can affect the promotion of cancer. Research on foods that fight cancer and that may also aid cancer survival is ongoing and active. Since 1982, the American Institute for Cancer Research, or AICR, has funded research in the field of nutrition, physical activity, and cancer prevention, treatment, and survival. AICR admits that there are no guarantees that you won't develop cancer, but decades of research have shown that we can take steps to protect ourselves against cancer. In 2007, an AICR expert panel prepared a comprehensive global report that looked at thousands of studies involving many things potentially linked to cancer risk. Their continuous update project continues to update the research. The strength of the evidence linking different aspects of diet, activity level, and body weight to risk of specific cancer types. The AICR uses systematic literature reviews, or SLRs, to assess whether there is a link between lifestyle and various cancers. As of 2015, the AICR has established that lifestyle, meaning diet, body weight, and physical activity, can raise or lower risk of the following cancers: colorectal cancer, breast cancer, and also breast cancer survival, meaning that lifestyle affects survival rates for those diagnosed with breast cancer, endometrial cancer, esophageal cancer, cancer of the gallbladder, cancer of the kidney, cancer of the liver, mouth, pharynx, and larynx cancers, pancreatic cancer, prostate cancer, stomach cancer, ovarian cancer. The strongest and most consistent lifestyle finding in respect to risk for these cancers is body weight, more specifically body fat. The AICR recommends diets dominated by fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and beans, as such foods are low in calorie density. Fruits and vegetables are especially important, as the AICR states that there is strong evidence that diets high in fruits and vegetables reduce the risk of mouth, pharynx, larynx, and stomach cancers. No single food or food component can protect you against cancer by itself. but strong evidence does show that a diet filled with a variety of plant foods such as vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans helps lower risk for many cancers. Foods can fight cancer directly. In laboratory studies, many individual minerals, vitamins, and phytochemicals demonstrate anti-cancer effects. Yet evidence suggests it is the synergy of compounds working together in foods and in the overall diet that offers the strongest cancer protection. Foods can also fight cancer indirectly. According to AICR's second expert report and its updates, carrying excess body fat increases the risk of 10 cancers. Vegetables and fruits are low in calories, which help us to get to and to stay at a healthy weight. Whole grains and beans are rich in fiber and moderate in calories, which also help in weight management efforts. When it comes to cancer prevention, diet is important, but other lifestyle behaviors are important as well. Tobacco use is the single greatest avoidable risk factor for cancer mortality worldwide, causing an estimated 22% of cancer deaths per year. In 2004, 1.6 million of the 7.4 million cancer deaths were due to tobacco use. Alcohol use is a risk factor for many cancer types, including cancer of the oral cavity, pharynx, larynx, esophagus, liver, colorectum, and breast. Risk of cancer increases with the amount of alcohol consumed. Regular physical activity and the maintenance of a healthy body weight, along with a healthy diet, will considerably reduce cancer risk. And dietary modification is, of course, another important approach to cancer control. Once again, diets high in fruits and vegetables may have a protective effect against many cancers. Conversely, excess consumption of red and processed meat may be associated with an increased risk of colorectal cancer. Large studies in England, Germany, and the US show significant reduction in cancer risk in those that avoid meat. Countries with a higher intake of fat, especially fat from animal products, such as meat and dairy products, have a higher incidence of breast cancer. The consumption of high-fat foods such as meat, dairy products, fried foods, and even vegetable oils causes a woman's body to make more estrogens, which encourage cancer cell growth in the breast and other organs that are sensitive to female sex hormones. This suggests that by avoiding fatty foods throughout life, hormone-related cancer risk decreases. As with breast cancer, frequent consumption of meat, particularly red meat, is associated with an increased risk of colon cancer. A review published in the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics assessed whether certain modifications in diet have a beneficial effect on the prevention of prostate cancer. Results suggest that a diet low in fat, red meat, dairy, and calcium, yet high in fruits and vegetables, is beneficial in preventing and treating prostate cancer. Consumption of highly processed or charcoal meats, dairy products, and fats seemed to be correlated with prostate cancer. One of the reasons diets high in meat, dairy, and eggs are linked to cancer is because diets high in these animal foods crowd out cancer-protecting plant foods. However, cooked meat itself creates a number of cancer-causing substances. There's a family of compounds called heterocyclic amines that are especially troubling. According to the National Cancer Institute, heterocyclic amines are carcinogens formed when meat is broiled, roasted, grilled, or cooked in any manner. The more well done, the higher the carcinogen level. Women who eat broiled, grilled, baked, fried, barbecued, and smoked meats have 5 times the risk of developing breast cancer. Diets high in animal products and vegetable oils not only kill immune system cells, but they also stimulate an abnormally high production of hormones. Hormones like estrogen and testosterone greatly increase the risk of developing breast and prostate cancers. High levels of insulin-like growth factor 1 has shown to be a potent cancer promoter. Levels are increased in people consuming high-fat animal-based diets. The worst choices of meats are processed meats. Processed meats include hot dogs, bacon, sausage, smoked meats, salami, pepperoni, bologna, and other cold cuts. Processed meats contain substances called nitrosamines, which are highly carcinogenic and should be avoided at all costs. Substances called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons even make the fumes from cooked meat problematic. In fact, inhaling fumes from bacon while cooking is equivalent to secondhand smoke. It deposits particles in lungs just like cigarettes. These foods are loaded with fat, saturated fat, and sodium, and increase our risk for coronary artery disease and cancer. They should come with a health warning. Here are some more cancer facts related to animal food consumption. Young girls raised on a typical high-fat Western diet have much higher estrogen levels and begin puberty at unnaturally early ages. The average age to begin puberty used to be 14 to 17. The average age today is 12. In other words, high-fat diets have added years of menstrual cycles to women's lives. Women throughout the world raised on more whole plant foods reach puberty at the normal age of 16 to 17. Milk is full of bovine estrogen from cows, and pesticides and other toxic chemicals also raise estrogen levels. The EPA estimates that nearly 95% of the pesticide residue in the typical American diet comes from meat, fish, and dairy products. Fish in particular contain carcinogens like PCBs and DDT, and heavy metals like mercury, arsenic, lead, and cadmium. Breast cancer thrives in an estrogen-rich environment, and American women have very high estrogen levels in comparison to women around the world. Eating a high-fiber diet removes excessive hormones from the body and lowers estrogen levels, greatly reducing your risk for cancer. Dietary fiber is only found in whole and minimally processed plant foods. Here are some population data that are eye-opening. A 1958 report confirmed by autopsy that only 18 deaths were attributed to prostate cancer in the entire country of Japan. Those numbers have changed dramatically as Japan's dietary habits have become more westernized. In Japan in 2005, there were 9,265 deaths from prostate cancer. And Japan's per capita consumption of meat and poultry in 1961 was approximately 17 pounds. In 2002, this had risen to 97 pounds. There was also a dramatic increase in per capita milk and cheese consumption from 1963 to 2003. Although there may be other factors that have also influenced the increase in prostate cancer deaths, these correlations cannot be ignored. Nor can the following statistics on breast cancer rates among countries be ignored, especially a glaring anomaly in these rates. The top 15 countries with the highest rates of breast cancer are listed here. Uruguay is an interesting case because it is the only country in the top 15 that is considered a developing rather than a developed country. One possible explanation for Uruguay's high breast cancer rate relates to diet. The typical Uruguayan diet is relatively high in fat due to a low fruit and vegetable intake and a high level of red meat consumption. Uruguay happens to be the largest consumer of beef in the world on a per capita basis. Uruguay's meat consumption more closely matches the meat consumption of developed countries rather than most developing countries, which certainly may explain Uruguay's appearance on this gloomy list. You may be wondering if there has ever been a definitive study that shows that people following a whole food plant-based diet can not only reduce their risk of developing cancer, but can also treat their cancer by making significant dietary and lifestyle changes. The answer comes from a physician introduced in our first video, Dr. Dean Ornish. Dr. Ornish directed the first randomized controlled trial demonstrating lifestyle changes can stop or reverse the progression of early-stage prostate cancer. He and his colleagues published a randomized controlled trial showing that the progression of early-stage prostate cancer may be stopped or perhaps even reversed by making changes in diet and lifestyle similar to those that reverse heart disease. This was the first randomized controlled trial showing that the progression of any type of cancer may be modified just by changing what we eat and how we live. What's true for prostate cancer may be true for breast cancer as well. In another study, they found that changing lifestyle changes gene expression. After only 3 months, over 500 genes were beneficially affected, upregulating or turning on disease-preventing genes, and downregulating or turning off genes that promote cancer, heart disease, inflammation, and other illnesses. This is the first time that comprehensive lifestyle changes have been shown to beneficially affect gene expression in men with prostate cancer. These studies show how powerful comprehensive lifestyle changes can be, how dynamic these mechanisms are, and how quickly benefits may occur. It's not all in our genes. The research we're sharing today shows that big changes equal big results. When you make comprehensive lifestyle changes, most people find that they feel so much better so quickly. It reframes the reason for changing from fear of dying to joy of living. And joy and love are powerful, sustainable motivators, but fear and deprivation are not. Although this video series has only shared a small fraction of the scientific research that supports whole food plant-based diets, I hope you've seen enough to convince you that you can recapture your health and improve your quality of life by making the big changes that are necessary. At this point, I hope you're seriously considering transitioning to a whole food plant-based diet. If you are, I bet there are at least 2 questions rolling around in your head. The first is, how the heck can I possibly eat this way? And the second, are whole food plant-based diets only for lunatics and hippies? The first question will be addressed a little bit later in this video and through other resources that you can find on the plantasticlife.com website. As for the second question, let's go to the next slide. Are whole food plant-based diets only for lunatics and hippies? The thought of avoiding dairy, meat, fish, poultry, eggs, and added oils seems crazy to you. You are concerned that by eating this way you will be labeled by family, friends, and acquaintances as a Looney Tune. Wouldn't it be nice if conventional medical doctors were advocating whole food plant-based diets to all of their patients? Wouldn't you find it easier to convince friends and family that you're not part of some hyper-healthy lunatic fringe? The day medical doctors routinely encourage whole food plant-based diets to their patients may not be as far off as you think. Back in the spring of 2013, Kaiser Permanente, the nation's largest managed care organization, came out in support of plant-based diets. The amount of evidence supporting the amazing health benefits of whole food plant-based diets compelled Kaiser Permanente to encourage all of its physicians to become more knowledgeable about plant-based nutrition. In an article entitled Nutritional Update for Physicians, Plant-Based Diets, published in the Kaiser Permanente Journal in the spring of 2013, Philip J. Tuso and colleagues provide a convincing case for whole food plant-based diets to Kaiser's physicians. Here's how the authors summarize the article's purpose. The purpose of this article is to help physicians understand the potential benefits of a plant-based diet, to the end of working together to create a societal shift toward plant-based nutrition. There is at least moderate quality evidence from the literature that plant-based diets are associated with significant weight loss and a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease and mortality compared with diets that are not plant-based. These data suggest that plant-based diets may be a practical solution to prevent and treat chronic diseases. The authors end the article with this hopeful statement. The future of healthcare will involve an evolution toward a paradigm where the prevention and treatment of disease is centered not on a pill or a surgical procedure, but on another serving of fruits and vegetables. I believe that Kaiser's decision to promote whole food plant-based diets is a major step in pulling plant-based diets in from the fringes. So if your friends or family members are concerned that whole food plant-based eating is not sufficiently supported by the medical establishment, this article may alleviate their concerns. Heck, it may even get them to consider major dietary change. How great would that be? The evidence supporting whole food plant-based diets not only is changing how more and more MDs are looking at treating chronic disease, but the evidence is so strong it's resulted in a new science. Nutrigenomics is the study of the effects of foods and food constituents on gene expression. We've known for a long time that the Western diet greatly increases risks for chronic diseases. The Western diet is high in processed foods. These are foods that often have added fat and oil, added sugar, refined flour, added salt, and many added chemicals. Western diets are also loaded with dairy, meat, fish, poultry, and eggs. And as countries like China and India become more industrialized, inhabitants of cities are adopting a Western diet, and the incidence of type 2 diabetes and other chronic diseases are skyrocketing in both countries. Also, many human migration studies have shown populations eating traditional diets where chronic diseases were almost non-existent begin developing the chronic diseases common to the locations to which they moved. Dr. John McDougall witnessed this during his time treating Filipino, Chinese, and Japanese plantation workers who began eating like Americans. What does this tell us? Well, it tells us that genetics load the gun, but lifestyle, especially diet, pulls the trigger. We are not helpless victims to our genes. This should excite you. The dietary changes we recommend are simple, but we do realize that they are substantial for many of you watching. That is why we first want you to focus on the wide variety of foods that you can eat on a whole food plant-based diet. This is the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine's Power Plate. It contains fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And remember, legumes are beans, peas, and lentils. These are the foods that promote health and prevent chronic disease. Ideally, you should eat them in their whole and minimally processed forms. A whole food plant-based diet is much more than just salads. Salads are great, but you are mistaken if you think that is all you can eat. And some of you may be doubting that you'll be able to transition to a whole food plant-based diet because you can't get beyond the foods that you'll have to restrict or severely limit. But I assure you that you can eat a wide variety of foods when eating or living a whole food plant-based lifestyle. You can eat any fruit that you like. This list is certainly not exhaustive, but it includes common fruits that most Americans can purchase in their local supermarket. Many different colors are represented on this list. The pigments providing the color of the plants that we eat represent the phytonutrients in the plant. Phyto means plant, so phytonutrient means plant nutrient. These phytonutrients, when eaten as part of the whole food, provide us enormous health protection. There are thousands of these nutrients that have been discovered and more continue to be discovered. Whenever science tries to isolate one nutrient that is believed to provide a certain health benefit, studies often show no benefit of supplementation and sometimes show a harmful effect. The benefits come from the combination of these plant nutrients in their natural package. So it's always best to eat fruit in its whole form, and the same goes for vegetables. There are thousands of vegetables in the world, so this slide represents a minute percentage of vegetables from which to choose. Many people who successfully transition to a whole food plant-based diet end up discovering and loving vegetables that they never knew existed. I can't tell you how many people tell me that their healthy diet is much more interesting than the typical American diet that they used to follow. Folks also get to enjoy products made from whole grains. Rice, wheat, corn, rye, barley, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, teff, spelt, millet, and oats. Now, botanists might take me to task for including quinoa, buckwheat, and amaranth as grains, as they don't technically meet the definition of a grain, but nutritionally we count them as grains. Intact grains are the least processed and lowest in calorie density. Examples of cooked, intact whole grains would be brown and wild rice, oatmeal, quinoa, millet, and barley. Whole grain foods include hot and cold cereals, pastas, and breads. When shopping for whole grain breads, cereals, and pastas, the key word to look at in the ingredients is whole, W-H-O-L-E. If it says unbleached and enriched wheat flour, it's not a flour made from the whole grain. If it says durum or semolina flour without the word whole in front of it, it's not made from the whole grain. The last foods on the power plate are legumes, which represent beans, peas, and lentils. And just like fruits and veggies and whole grains, there are a wide variety of legumes from which to choose, and their colors also represent unique combinations of phytonutrients. Most of us would benefit by increasing our intake of legumes. If beans are not your favorite, consider using them to make healthy dips when snacking on crackers or spreading on whole grain bread. There's a lot of wisdom in the old childhood rhyme, beans, beans, they're good for your heart. The more you eat them, well, you know the rest. Actually, if you increase your bean intake gradually, you should be able to minimize their musical impact. And before you know it, you'll be eating beans at every meal, just like the rhyme recommends. Now, salads are great, but a whole food plant-based diet is not just about salads. Foods you can eat include pizza, pasta, bread, hot cereals, cold cereals, sandwiches, burgers, burritos, tacos, enchiladas, soups, stews, potatoes, sweet potatoes, casseroles, corn, peas, desserts, frozen desserts, nuts, seeds, and avocados. I do have to mention that you have to be aware that nuts, seeds, and avocados are not allowed on Dr. Esselstyn's heart reversal diet. However, Dr. Esselstyn does allow some ground flax seeds. One thing that is important to remember is that whole and minimally processed fruits, veggies, whole grains, and beans all contain dietary fiber, which promotes health. There is no fiber in animal products, and highly processed plant foods usually have all or most of the fiber removed. There are many different types of fiber, so it's best to eat a variety of whole plant foods. You will not get the same health benefits by supplementing an unhealthy diet with a fiber supplement. Again, remember, it's all about the food. So as the Power Plate recommends, our diet should be dominated by fruits, veggies, whole grains, and legumes. But what does a typical American eat? This chart is a good representation. Only 12% of the diet consists of whole plant foods. We need to eat more of these for the fiber and phytonutrients that we can only get from whole plant foods. 25% of the calories come from animal foods. Only animal foods contain dietary cholesterol, and animal foods are our primary source of saturated fat. 63% of calories come from processed foods. These foods contain added oils, added sugars, and refined grains. There are different degrees of processed foods. The more processed the food, the more phytonutrient deficient, calorically dense, and disease-promoting. As we've mentioned a number of times, minimally processed plant foods are allowed and even desired on a whole food plant-based diet. But how do we differentiate between highly processed foods from minimally processed foods? I'd like to use the next slide to explain. I decided to use corn as my example. Corn is unique because we can eat corn as a vegetable, such as corn on the cob, or as a grain, such as cornbread, corn flakes, cornmeal, and corn flour. When you eat whole kernels of corn with no butter or margarine, you're eating a healthy food that contains phytonutrients. It also contains fiber, protein, vitamins, and minerals. Whole corn dried and ground into a flour is slightly or minimally processed. It has lost some water and some water-soluble nutrients, but it still contains phytonutrients, protein, vitamins, minerals, and fiber. So whole grain cornmeal and whole grain corn flour are acceptable foods. It's important to note that as the food becomes more and more processed, its calorie density usually increases. We'll address calorie density in greater detail in video number 3 in our Recapture Your Health series. If the bran and germ are removed from the corn kernel and then ground into a flour, you lose much of the fiber and many health-promoting nutrients. So the resulting refined flour contains fewer nutrients and is more calorically dense than the whole grain flour. The last two columns represent highly processed foods. If we extract just the sugar from the corn and discard the rest, we are left with pure sugar calories. There's no fiber, no protein, and only trace amounts of vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients. We are left with a calorically dense, nutrient-deficient food. If you were to eat 1 pound of cooked corn kernels, you would be eating health-promoting nutrients in just 366 calories. If you ate a pound of corn sugar, you would be getting almost no health-promoting nutrients in 1,800 calories. It should be very clear to you why we should avoid highly processed foods. And as bad as pure sugar is, pure oil is worse. If we just extract the fat from corn and discard the rest, we have corn oil. Oil, whether from corn or olives or coconuts or any plant, is the most processed and most calorically dense food you can eat. Despite everything you hear about certain oils being health foods, be very clear that they are not. Oil contains very few health-promoting nutrients and is 2.5 times more calorically dense than pure sugar. That's right, 4,000 calories per pound. All of the protein and fiber are gone, as well as most of the health-promoting phytonutrients that were in the original food. If you are not convinced that oil is junk food, I encourage you to access the frequent discussion topics icon on the Plantastic Life webpage. There you'll find many articles that I hope will persuade you to the Plantastic Life team's view on oil. So remember, the more a food is processed, the more calorically dense it becomes, as it also loses health-promoting properties. Not a good deal if vibrant health is your goal. Alright, it's time to test your ability to identify different degrees of food processing. Take the time to answer the questions on the next 5 slides. Pause the video after each question to ensure that you have enough time to answer, and restart it when ready. Here goes. What is the whole food? The potato or the French fries? The correct answer is the potato. The nutritious skin is removed from the French fries, and worse yet, the French fries are fried in oil. Remember that oil is the most processed food there is and contains 4,000 calories per pound, and those French fries soak up the oil like a sponge. I promise the next 4 aren't quite this easy. Order these from least processed to most processed. Brown rice syrup, brown rice, white rice. The correct order from least processed to most processed is brown rice because it's a whole grain, white rice, it's not a whole grain because the bran and germ are removed, and brown rice syrup is sugar extracted from rice. Which is the healthiest choice? Olives or olive oil? The correct answer is the olives. Olive oil, like any other oil, is pure fat calories and is the most calorically concentrated food we can eat. Olives, along with avocados, nuts, nut butters, and seeds, are calorically dense whole plant foods because of their high fat content. If you are overweight or obese, it's best to limit these plant foods. However, it's better to get fat from the whole plant food rather than from extracted oils. Order these from least processed to most processed. Textured or isolated soy protein, these are often found in mock meats and cheeses. Soybeans, and these happen to be immature soybeans called edamame. Soybean oil, soy milk. The correct order from least processed to most is soybeans, soy milk, textured or isolated soy protein, and soybean oil. Hopefully you had the soybeans and the soybean oil in the right spots. The soy milk and the textured soy protein are a little tougher to separate. The soy protein is just that, protein extracted from the soybean. Everything else is discarded. The soy milk, although obviously processed, maintains some soy protein in addition to other health-promoting nutrients. Therefore, the soy milk is less processed than the textured soy protein. Textured or isolated soy proteins have been shown to increase blood levels of insulin-like growth factor 1, known to be a cancer promoter at higher levels. In fact, it's been shown to increase insulin-like growth factor 1 even more than dairy products. These soy proteins are found in mock meats and other mock foods consumed by vegans. Consider most commercial mock foods as junk foods. And now for the last slide in the quiz. Order these from least processed to most processed. An apple, apple juice, applesauce. The correct order from least processed to most processed is the apple, applesauce, apple juice. It's best to eat the whole fruit when possible. Drinking fruit juice is not the best way to get your fruit servings. It's not a good idea to get too many of your calories from liquids, especially if you need to lose weight. Getting calories in liquid form messes up the body's normally flawless satiety mechanism, which is the mechanism that alerts us that alerts us to when we've eaten enough food and calories. Eating too many high-calorie dense foods has a similar effect on this mechanism. That's why we decided to include a third video on registered dietitian Jeff Novick's calorie density approach to whole food plant-based eating. Check it out. I think you will find it will be worth your time.